So here it is, the night before the complete encapsulation coat on the deck. I went over the top of everything again with 80 grit on the random orbital, just trying to make sure that these seams were as level as I could get them. The entire top deck is ready to go. The outside shear line again is ready to go. Just re-sanded above the tape. Interior cockpit edges, went over that just one more time. Trying to get everything completely ready for encapsulation tomorrow, so that's where we are. So here it is with the first encapsulating coat of epoxy. A little rough, but that's to be expected. Again, sanded up. It'll get smoother with the next coat, but happy with the color, happy with the color of the stripes. Everything just looks pretty good. So we'll let this cure up, sand her down, put on a second coat. Ah, the joys of boat building. So, 7 days ago, we put an entire top coat of epoxy on this thing. For some reason, which I cannot explain, from this joint forward, it never cured. It's still gummy. It's tacky. I mean, hear that? It's sticky. I can't explain it. I don't know why. But from the dash forward, all of this epoxy is sticky like that. From this point back, it's completely hard, dry, cure, no problems with it. And I can't explain that. I don't know why. I would understand if it were done out, if this were two separate batches of epoxy, if one mix was up here and the rest was back there. That's not the case. I mixed one 12-ounce batch together in the same cup, put them on with the same roller, tipped it with the same brush, front to back of the entire boat. But for some reason, from the dash forward, it did not cure. 7 days later. The rear cured. It was hard. It was fantastic. I've sanded all of this. It's ready for a second coat. The front, I went through, and this will tell you how gummy it was. 3 pieces of sandpaper to do this entire rear half. 3. To do a portion of that side of the bow, I went through 60 pieces. 6-0. It would gum up almost instantly. This stuff was not curing. There's really no way to fix it other than to scrape it back to bare wood and apply another coat. So that's what I'm doing. I've got this scraper. This thing works fantastic. It doesn't take much pressure to scrape that layer off. I'm down to bare wood. You can see all this light stuff. Taking me about an hour and 20 minutes so far. I'm just about at the halfway mark. Then I'll go scrape that side. So I've got to scrape this entire front deck, scrape all the epoxy off of it. I then need to sand it again with 80 grit, rough the entire thing up. And I'm just going to go to this joint and I will recoat the bow. Recoat the entire bow in epoxy. Let it cure, sand the bow, then I'll be ready to do a second coat on the entire thing. So, much like always, it's just another setback. If you like setbacks and disappointments, you're going to love building a boat. So anyhow, that's where we're at. It's got to be done. It's the right way to do it. You cannot put another coat of epoxy on top of this, or it'll just compound the problem. The stuff underneath will never cure, regardless of what the top does. Chances are it won't cure as well. So it's got to be taken back to bare wood. Scraper just works the best. I've tried every combination of chemical you can imagine. Scraper is actually pretty quick. So, damn it! I guess, 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. We're still making forward progress. All right, well, 5.5 hours to scrape that bow, sand everything down, and recoat it. But I've got both heaters going in here. It's about 78 degrees inside my little painter shanty here, so this stuff should cure up really well, hopefully. Okay, well, after that setback, we are back in business again. This is the following day after the recoat on the bow, and this stuff is like rock hard. So I think we won this battle. But anyhow, let's see. So let's talk a little bit about what I think might have caused this. So what I was doing is I was mixing 12-ounce batches to coat the deck. The problem is I'm mixing that 12-ounce batch in a 16-ounce cup, and that doesn't leave you a whole lot of room to stir it thoroughly, vigorously, without epoxy getting spilt out of the cup, basically. So I think it didn't get a good enough mix. Even though I timed the batches, I mix every batch for 2 minutes, it may have not got turned over enough in that cup to get a thorough mix. I started coating the deck on the first coat. So, I'd roll some and put it back in the pan and get some more on the roller and roll some. And anyhow, I think that first, probably 8 or 9 rolls worth of epoxy wasn't mixed, but every time I'd go back to or mixed thoroughly enough. Every time I'd go back to the pan and roll it again, I would, in a sense, be mixing it more yet. So by the time I got to this point, it was pretty thoroughly mixed. That's my guess. I ran 2 heaters in here for about 12 hours. And the epoxy had greened up by that point. I mean, it was getting pretty darn hard. So I shut down one of the heaters and I let it continue with one heater throughout the night. Came back out this morning. It's nice and clear. It's bumpy as hell. Of course, that's to be expected. But the epoxy is nice and clear, which is what I'm hoping for. That's a sign that, it's warm enough and the humidity is low enough. So I'm pretty happy with this coat. I'll let it sit, another day or so, but I'm pretty sure it's hard enough now. If I wanted to, I could sand it. But I'll let it sit another day, and then I'll wash it down with denatured alcohol to get the wax. If you look here, see that waxy surface? That's the amine blush. Wipe that down with denatured alcohol, sand it, and then the whole deck will be ready for a second coat. So, long story short, on this coat, I modified how I'm mixing the epoxy. I mixed a 12-ounce batch, even though I knew it wouldn't take that much to just do the deck. But I mixed 2 separate 6-ounce batches. I had my daughter come out and help. I filled, again, this is Glen-L epoxy shield, so I filled 2 cups full of 5 ounces worth of the resin, and then I added an ounce of hardener and an ounce of hardener to each cup, and then started a 2-minute timer. We both stirred simultaneously each 6-ounce batch. When the 2-minute timer was up, we then combined those 2 6-ounce batches into one 12-ounce batch, only this time I did it in a larger cup, in about a 24-ounce cup. Once both of those were combined into the 24-ounce cup, I stirred it for another timed minute, just to guarantee that it was thoroughly stirred, and then applied it on here and then ran heat. And I think that made the difference. I'm going to continue all of my encapsulation work using that method. When I do, a 12-ounce batch, I'll do 2 6-ounces simultaneously, then combine them, mix them yet again, and then apply it. I think it guarantees a more thorough mix, and I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure that's what caused the epoxy issue. There's sanding dust all over this, but so that's where we are. Should be ready to recoat the entire deck in a second coat. My guess is we're going to have to do 3 coats on this deck to get it smooth enough for its final clear, but making good progress. All right, now we're talking. That's better. So I came out tonight, went over the entire bow of the deck with 80 grit, knocking any little bumps or bubbles or, that really rough surface that was on here, just knocking it down flush. Now it looks like the rear. Need to brush all of this down. I'm going to have to take a little bit of Scotch-Brite and just rough up the seams because some of them are just slightly below the surface still. So rough all the seams up so the epoxy will stick. Put on another coat, sand it. And then, by the 3rd coat, it should be completely flush. I'm hoping, if everything goes according to plan, but much, much, much better. This batch cured up, no issues. Making good progress. So we just finished rolling on the 2nd coat of epoxy, and it is substantially smoother. You can see the gloss on stuff. It's not perfect, but it is much, much, much smoother. And again, this is wet. I've got 2 heaters running in here. So I'm gonna run these heaters for at least 12 hours, and I'll probably kick off the 2nd one back here. and just let that little guy run for the night. But substantially smoother. This is looking pretty good. This is not bad. So with any luck, we can get it to cure up like this. That'd be good. Making good progress. I don't think the setbacks killed us too bad. So here we are the next morning. At about 2:30 in the morning, I shut off this heater back here, and I just let this little guy run. I got back up at about 6:30 this morning. The temp was sitting around 55 degrees or so in here with just one heater running, which was plenty safe enough. Again, I watched the humidity and the dew point like crazy, and I try to pick my epoxy nights where the outside ambient temperature never drops below the dew point or close to it. That was last night, so it was a great night to do epoxy. So just running even one small heater in here was plenty enough to get a nice clear cure on it. So it's still very, very shiny. You can see back here all of the reflection of the bisqueen from the walls. So I mean, it's pretty smooth now. It's not perfect, but it's pretty darn good. Pretty impressed with it. So yeah, I think by the third coat, this thing should look to be about like glass. Pretty impressed. So I haven't played with it a whole lot, but I'm pretty sure that we are plenty cured enough that I don't have to run heat on it. But I'm going to let the heat run for about another 5 hours. We'll give it about 28, 29 hours. I would say of that 28 or 29 hours running heat in here, that again, it's pretty smooth. Of that 28 or 29 hours, a solid 24 of it was keeping the temperature in this booth no lower than about 72. So it had plenty of time to sit and get a good cure. Moving right along. Pretty happy with it. Boy, am I glad I epoxied the night before last and not last night. Just got a freak snowstorm out of the middle of nowhere. All right, so we've got some stainless goodies. Got them all laid out here on the table. I'm getting ready to start picking places and temporarily installing everything, drilling holes, screwing them down, just to get all my fit done tomorrow. So I thought we'd go over each one of these parts in a little more detail. So what you're looking at here, these are Atwood brand stainless through holes. There's a pair of them that are identical. They are for 5/8 hose and stainless steel, 3 3/4 length. These will be my drains for the transom. So I'll drill my hole to this diameter, slip them through, mark them, and then cut them off, and they'll get epoxied in place. So this is what you'll see on the rear of the transom. This is the exact same thing. Again, Atwood brand 5/8 hose, only 2 1/4 inch long. And this is their short through hull fitting. And this will be my breather up on the port side of the bow for my fuel tank. 5/8 hose of the fuel tank. So these are Sea Dog brand 3/16 stainless steel skein bow chocks for 1/2 inch rope. They are 4 3/4 inch long. Really, really pretty. I love those skein bow chocks. Then we've got some Perco brand step pads. There's 2 per package, so there's a total of 4 here. And these are where you'll step on the cover boards for each cockpit. There'll be one mounted in the center of each cover board for each cockpit. So you can step on that and not scar up the wood when you're climbing in and out of the boat. So 4 step pads. These are Perco cleats, and these are what's known as a closed base cleat. They have a really, really like vintage retro look that I love. Now closed base, an open base cleat would have a hole through here. You could put a rope right through the middle and tie it. Closed base does not, hence closed base. So these I ordered, let me get my tape measure out here. I ordered these as 4-inch closed base cleats. They measure closer to about, right at about 4-inch on the top cleat half. They're a little bit longer, 4 1/2 on the base. I ordered, again, they come in pairs. I ordered 2 pairs. I only need 3, so there'll be an extra one. But you know, I was trying to guess and figure out a size that was going to work good for the boat. And after lots of measuring, I thought these 4 inches looked about right. Again, they're recommended for a max of 1/2 inch line, just like the skiing bow chocks, so they should be a pretty good match. This is my Moeller brand deck fill plate. This is where you put the fuel, or where you'll open to put fuel in the boat. See, it says gas right there. It's got a nice little O-ring cap that screws down. You can see it takes a special key to open. It did in fact come with a key right there on the back. There's a rubber gasket. And the cap, or the lid, is connected with a chain so you don't lose it. So that's 1.5 inches for that. Matches the Moeller fuel tank. This is 3M VHB tape. This is what I will be attaching my transom bands with. It's clear tape, uber strong. Put that on there, it's forever. Then we've got an Atwood brand all-around light for the transom. It is on a 24-inch pole, and it's a 2-pin. So if you go to buy them, you know, they'll specify it's a 2-pin and the length. It's a 1-pin on the length, 3-pin on the length. So that covers the all-around light. This is the stowaway plug for that light. This little top here just flips to the side. It's got a ground and a hot wire. Screws down to the deck, really simple. You slip this little cover plate to the side, and it has 2 little male pins in there. The light is indexed with a single screw right here, so you can't put it in backwards or upside down. Now these up here, these are my fenders, and basically they keep you from dinging the hell out of your boat when you're tied up to the dock. I bought them with this little angle on the side because the zip is a fairly short or shallow freeboard, and that little angle will hang on there really nice and protect the sides of the boat when I'm docked up. This is a Perco brand bicolor bow light. It is super pretty. It's got a 3/4 inch staff hole in the top of it, so I will probably have a little flag staff made with some sort of flag on the bow, just like the old Chris Crafts used to. But that's Perco brand. And then these LED 6-inch trailer lights. They're 6-inch oval, just like your classic tail lights have been on trailers for years and years. The difference is they're LEDs. I happened to be walking through my local Ace, not really looking for trailer lights, but I stumbled into that aisle, and they had these particular trailer lights that were normally about $20 a piece, 19 and change. They had discontinued them. I got them for $1.91 a piece for the LED lights with the rubber surround. Unbelievable buy. I ran up to the cash register just to have her price checked because I thought something was wrong. But no, they were in fact $1.91 a piece. So I bought the last 2 they had. If they would have had 6 or 8, I would have bought all 8 of them. So that's where we are. Those are the parts we have, and we're getting ready tomorrow morning to start drilling holes and screwing stuff down and locating this stuff. So what you see here, this is a little over $400 worth of parts. Doesn't look like it, but it is. Well, it is officially March 2018. For the month of February 2018, we went up 20 hours. Of that 20 hours, 14 1/4 that was in epoxy. So that brings our epoxy coat up to 131.5 hours. And 5.75 hours was in deck. So that brings our deck up to 101.5 hours. I wasn't really sure installing the deck hardware, if I should have put that in stainless or deck. I decided to put it on deck because the stainless is actually fab stainless work, and I wanted to keep that separate. So we went up a decent amount of money, $611.29 this month. That was in some of my fuel hose, that was in all of my stainless deck hardware. There's some more costs that I didn't include in this month, although it's on order. My windshield brackets. I ordered my windshield brackets from a company called Lakeshore Aluminum Casting. I believe they're out of Pennsylvania. But anyhow, it's a 4-week lead time on those brackets. They're a sand-casted bracket, so basically they got to pull the mold down, smelt aluminum, pour the brass brackets, and then ship them to me. So it's a 4-week lead time, basically. So I didn't include that cost because it has not been charged to my account, although they are on order. So we'll see that cost for the brackets, and that was $158. We'll see that this month in March. But $611.29. That brings our grand total in the zip to $10,297.90. So we are comfortably over to the $10,000 range now. And our 20 hours even, that brings us up to 937 and a quarter hours invested in the zip. So really the only major thing left to do on the zip is going to be the clear coat. I've saved enough money aside, I believe, to have that done. So with the clear coat, you know, we're going to be close to 11,000, I'm guessing, by the time everything's done. Again, that's just a guess. Hopefully it's accurate. But so anyhow, let's talk about one last thing I've got sitting over here on my bench. Fuel hose. So this is 1.5" fuel hose, fuel fill hose. This is 5/8 fuel hose. This is my breather hose. And then we've got 5/16 fuel line. So 18 feet of this, that should be more than enough to get from the tank to the rear of the boat. I bought 5 feet of the 5/8 hose for my breather. Again, that's more than I needed. And the 1.5", this was 3 foot. I cut 12 inches off of this. I wish I would have taken the time to slip the floor planks in and slide the tank in and do a quick measurement before I went and bought this 1.5" hose. This stuff is stupid expensive. I bought 3 feet. It was $60 for one 3-foot chunk of this 1.5" hose. Had I known I only needed 12 inches, it would have cost me $20 versus $60. So I bought 3 times more of that than I actually needed, that I'm stuck with now. So anyhow, I highly recommend when you go to buy fuel fill hose, that you take your measurement first. Don't just roundabout guess. You know, I was thinking that was going to be about a $20 hose, not $20 a foot. So let's take a look, see where we're at. As you can see, one more thing. These are my, and I called them earlier, transom drains. That's inaccurate. I want to state for the record, these, again, I have no transom drains in my boat, and I'm not putting any in it. These are actually going to be my motor well drains. So motor well drains, not transom, motor well. And I haven't installed those yet because my painter shanty is up, and it leaves me very, very limited access to the rear of the boat. So when I get the final epoxy coat done, I'll take my painter shanty down. That'll give me better access to the rear of the boat, and I'll get my motor well holes drilled and get the through holes installed in there. So let's take a look. Let's see where we're at. Okay, big reveal. Big reveal. Here we go. Check out the cinematic reveal here. Oh, look at that thing. Oh my God, so pretty. So pretty. So, as you can see, we've got our bow chocks installed. We've got our bow bicolor light, green on this side, red on that side. Got that installed. We've got our bow cleat and our fuel fill right up there. We've got all 4 of the step pads installed. We've got the rear cleats, the stern light pole and stern light socket installed. And we'll come around to this side. So pretty. And then if we dip down below the shear line here, there's my through hole fitting, the breather for my fuel tank. So we've got that guy installed also. So let's talk about some of this stuff, just so you get kind of a general idea of where everything's located. From the tip of the bow, measuring over to the skein bow chock, that is 30 inches to this leading edge. 30 inches from the leading edge to the tip of the bow. From the trailing edge of the skein bow chock, it is 5.5 inches to my seam. So that'll kind of help you locate where I put those. They are 3/16 of an inch from the edge of the shear. And I wanted to keep them pretty close to the shear because the rope will come through here and kind of, depending on the height of the dock, whether it drops down or goes up, I wanted to keep this edge as close as possible so that the rope didn't abrade on my finish up here on the bow. So that's where I located that. So then if you take, this is my seam, right here where the seam meets my white seam, if you take a straight edge and draw it straight across to the other side, that's where I mounted this light. right on this imaginary line from seam to seam. So that's where my bow light is mounted, and it's mounted directly in the center of the king plank. And I just lined it up off of my joint here, right across. So then from the trailing edge of my bow light to the leading edge of my bow cleat of the base, that's 12 inches, exactly 12 inches. Now the fuel fill, it is dead center of this plank, and it was located front to back. It's kind of hard to see. I went ahead and put my center floor plank and the two side floor planks in because that's what actually locates my fuel tank. You see one locating block there. It's hard to tell. There's one in the dark up here and one on the other side, but that locates my tank forward and left to right. So I put those in there, screwed them down real quick, slid the tank in, measured the height of my fuel fill hose, and I cut that to length. I then slipped that fuel fill hose on top of the tank, crawled underneath with a Sharpie and drew where the hose was touching the bottom of my deck, pulled the hose off, drilled a center hole up through the bottom of the boat, and that center hole turned out to be dead center of this plank. So then I drilled down from the top and installed that. So this is directly above the fuel fill hole in my tank. That's where it's located. It's not very far from the outside of the boat. It's really easy to get to, so you know, filling the boat with gas is going to be easy. On the outside of the hull, the through hull fitting, basically, if you can imagine the tank is sitting, you know, in here somewhere, this is directly in line with that breather on the tank. So that's how I located it front to back. As far as height goes, it's about 4 inches below the shear to the top of this thing for a specific reason. So if you look at the shape of the hull here, it's kind of curved. So this through hull fitting is kind of pointed up. It's kind of angled, which is good. What you want is you want that hose to start at your through hull fitting. You want it to raise up 3 or 4 inches before it drops down into the top of the tank for a specific reason. If I take a splash out here, if that were a horizontal hose or even just straight into the tank, the water would have a really easy path into the tank. Whereas if that hose rises up, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 inches before it turns and drops into the top of the tank, it's much less likely that you're going to take a big enough wave to force that water uphill through that hose and into the tank. Is it impossible? No, it absolutely can happen, but it's less likely running your through hole fitting lower than the highest point of your hose before it drops in. So we got that. Step pads, all 4 of the step pads, and these are Perco brand again, all 4 of the step pads, what I did was I measured from the opening, my dash, to the seat back, and I split that dead center. So that's where I located the step pad left to right. It's dead center of this cockpit. Now with the seat in here, you're looking at 2.5 inches or so of that cockpit's going to be taken up with the seat back. So it'll look slightly behind center with the seat in it. However, that's totally fine because I'm going to have the steering wheel over there. And if it were, you know, let's say we take away 2.5, 3 inches with the seat and we move this ahead, then you're really crowding getting in and out with where the steering wheel is. So I think this position is going to turn out good. So that's how I located them front to back. I then centered the step pad in the cover board this way, and that ends up being 2.25 inch spacing here, 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 and here. So they're dead center on the cover board. They're also dead center of the cutout, and all 4 of my step pads are located exactly like this because this cutout distance is, I want to say it's within 1/4 inch overall depth as the front cockpit. They're basically in the exact same spot. I just split the difference, that's my middle, and then centered them, and that turns out to be 2.25. Again, 2.25 spacing from the edge out and from this edge in. That's how I located the step pads. So the rear cleats, how I located them, it's kind of hard to tell, but I took a straight edge on this line of my motor well cutout, and I just projected that line out here to the end. where my cleat is located. So this very end of the cleat is dead in line with that motor well cutout. That's how I located them front to back. I then, same thing, split the difference of this cover board, started one screw, and then sliding this left to right, pivoting off that center screw, I kept taking measurements from the outside to my seam and from this outside to the outside of the shear until I got that the exact same measurement, and then I put the screws in. So that's how I located this front to back and left to right. I also hung one of my bumpers on here to make sure that the little loop for the rope would still leave me enough space to get a rope around this cleat to hang my bumper on, and it does. So that's how I located those cleats. Now on the stern light, we have the base for the stern light that it plugs into. You can see this is that little flip sideways cap I talked about. It just slides over, the light plugs in. It's a very snug fit. Basically the front of my base, or the socket, same thing. I just projected the line of the motor well straight out, and that's how I located this front to back. I then crawled underneath and made sure there was nothing obstructing it. So our carling, runs out here, and our motor well frame runs over here. So this was right out in the middle, nothing in the way. It's a fantastic spot for it. That's where I put it down. So that's how, where, why I located everything. Really, really happy with the look of it. So now I have to pull all of this stainless stuff off. I got to pull all these goodies off this week and do one final sand on the entire deck, do my third and final epoxy encapsulation on the deck, and then we should be pretty darn ready, I think, to go have this thing cleared and then get it back in final assembly. So we are making fantastic progress. I am so incredibly happy with the look. I mean, things are pretty smooth. You can see the reflection of the bow light in it and things like that. But it'll get smoother with the third coat. So that's where we are. Again, my windshield bracket's still probably a couple weeks out. So there'll be a side bracket right in here, a side bracket right over there, and then the middle bracket somewhere in here. So I'm guessing, I'll probably have the third coat on and cured before they show up. Then I can fit those real quick. I want to give this at least 3 weeks to cure and finish gassing out before it goes into clear. So that'll give me time to fit up the windshield brackets, maybe even make my windshield templates and things like that. But we are on the home stretch. We are almost there. And I am so impressed with how it's turning out. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe.